On June 6, 1944, at 0600 hours, the largest amphibious invasion in human history did not begin with the roar of artillery or the storm of landing craft. It began with a whisper, a silence. This was not a silence of the ears, but a silence of the mind. A sudden, crushing void that fell over the German defenses along the 50-mile stretch of French coastline. On Utah Beach, machine gunners forgot how to pull their triggers. In the bluffs above Omaha, entire artillery crews simply set down their shells, turned to one another, and wondered what they were doing there. There was no panic, no fear. There was only a great, placid emptiness. The intricate machinery of war, the years of training, the hatred, the ideology, it all evaporated in a single, silent instant. The Allied forces walked onto the shore not as conquerors, but as perplexed witnesses to an impossible, continental surrender. The official histories you have read were a lie, a carefully constructed narrative to mask a terrifying truth. The war was not won with bullets or bombs, but with a weapon that attacked the very concept of the self. This weapon had no name, but the doctrine behind it did. They called it the Babel contingency, and its origins lay not on a battlefield, but in the quiet, methodical mind of a forgotten Serbian-American physicist in the early 1920s. While the world was captivated by radio, drive, Eris Thorne was captivated by its ghosts, the strange harmonics, the resonant frequencies that seemed to affect more than just the receiver. He theorized that the human brain, with its billions of electrochemical pathways, operated on its own carrier frequency, a delicate, biological signal that governed everything from motor function to the very seat of consciousness. He believed that if he could find this frequency, he could amplify it. He dreamed of a world without misunderstanding, a form of technological telepathy that could unite humanity. The United States military had other dreams. By 1938, Thorne's utopian research was commandeered and weaponized under the codename Project Echo. The goal was no longer to connect minds, but to shatter them, to broadcast a counterfrequency so powerful, so precisely attuned to the thalamus, that it could overwhelm the brain's ability to process reality. It was, in theory, the perfect weapon, one that left infrastructure intact and neutralized an enemy without a single casualty. But to understand how this led to the eerie silence on the beaches of Normandy, we must first examine a forgotten incident in the desolate cold of the Siberian wilderness. The year was 1941. A covert American team, using technology based on Thorne's designs, set up a long-range transmitter aimed at a specific coordinate in the heart of the Soviet Union. The target: Gulag 73. A remote prison camp holding over 5,000 souls. The objective was simple: broadcast the disruptive frequency for 60 seconds and observe. They expected confusion, perhaps riots. They did not expect what happened next. For the first 30 seconds, everything went as planned. The prisoners and guards alike dropped their tools, looking around in a daze. But then, something went wrong. The frequency, designed to isolate minds, began to link them. A psychic cascade ignited across the camp. Individuals ceased to be individuals. They became nodes in a singular, terrified consciousness. The observers in the listening post heard it not through their radios, but in their own skulls. A faint, high-pitched wail of 5,000 minds screaming as one, before being extinguished into absolute, catatonic silence. The experiment was a horrifying success and a catastrophic failure. They had not created a tool of temporary disruption. They had created a soul killer. The technology was deemed too unpredictable, too monstrous, and officially, Project Echo was buried. But such power does not remain buried for long. The data, the schematics, the terrible resonant frequencies, they were stolen. A Soviet mole within the project delivered Thorne's nightmare directly to Stalin. The psychic arms race had begun, fought not in the skies with bombers, but in the shadows with espionage and infiltration. This single decision to shelve the project had a terrifying, unforeseen consequence. The Americans believed they had buried Pandora. They were wrong. They had merely shown the world that her box could be opened. The Cold War, was a decoy. While the world watched the slow, deliberate dance of nuclear brinksmanship, the real war was being fought for inner space. Agencies trained a new kind of operative: sensitives, individuals with a high innate resistance to psychic influence, tasked with hunting down enemy transmitters and shielding high-value targets from mental attack. Events like the mysterious Havana Syndrome were not attacks by some unknown sonic weapon. They were the clumsy early field tests of targeted psychic disruptors. For decades, The balance of power held. The technology was too much of a sledgehammer. A broadcast powerful enough to disable a command bunker would also incapacitate the surrounding city. It was mutually assured mental destruction. But the true terror of the Babel contingency wasn't the ability to silence a mind. It was the ability to rewrite it. By the late 1970s, the technology had been refined, miniaturized. It was no longer a wave, but a needle. And the first test of this new power would not happen on a battlefield, but in the heart of a bustling American suburb. The town was called Northwood, Ohio, a picture-perfect slice of the American dream. It was also the site of Operation Silent Consensus. For 6 weeks, a low-intensity, nearly undetectable frequency was broadcast from a disguised antenna in a nearby telephone relay tower. The signal wasn't designed to disrupt. It was designed to nudge. It didn't implant thoughts. It simply amplified feelings of agreeableness and dampened emotions of skepticism and anger. It fostered an artificial harmony, gently guiding the entire town's public opinion without a single citizen ever realizing their thoughts were not their own. It was the perfect tool of social control. The test was a resounding success, and it was the last time the technology was ever used under direct government control, because the schematics for Northwood were not kept in a vault. They were digitized, and in the new age of information, everything leaks. The Babel contingency, the power to erase and rewrite the human will, was now in the hands of an unknown player. Someone who saw it not as a weapon of war or a tool of control, but as an instrument of evolution. Just hours ago, at every deep space listening post across the globe, from the Very Large Array in New Mexico to the 500-meter aperture spherical telescope in China, every single one detected the same thing simultaneously. It was not an asteroid. It was not a solar flare. It was a broadcast. A complex, layered signal of unknown design, aimed not at a city, but at the entire planet. The Northwood test was not an endpoint. It was a calibration. And now, the true broadcast has begun. For the first few seconds, nothing happened. The world held its breath, waiting for the psychic apocalypse. And then, it came. Not as a scream, not as a command, but as a whisper felt by all 8 billion people at once. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't an order. It was a feeling, a single, complex emotion that had no human name. It was the crushing loneliness of a star, the patient waiting of a tectonic plate. It was a sorrow so ancient and vast, it made all of human history feel like a fleeting dream. The generals in their bunkers got it wrong. The intelligence agencies misinterpreted the threat. They had prepared for an enemy who wanted to control our minds. But what do you do with an enemy who only wants you to feel its pain? How can you fight a war when the only weapon being used is a shared, unbearable empathy for the attacker? This wasn't the Babel contingency. This was something else. The signal wasn't designed to make us agree. It was designed to make us understand. It was a message in the only true universal language, emotion. And the message was one of infinite, cosmic isolation. The schematics Thorne and his team had discovered in the 1950s, the resonant frequencies that could link minds, they weren't an invention. They were a discovery. They had stumbled upon a dormant biological function, a psychic receiver buried in our own DNA waiting for a signal. Project Echo wasn't a weapon. It was a key that had just been used to unlock every mind on the planet. And there is one person who has always known this. Eris Thorne has spent 60 years in the shadow of her father's work, living off the grid, monitoring the very frequencies he unleashed. While the world's governments chased ghosts and fought psychic proxy wars, she was listening. Not to them, but to the silence between the stars, waiting for the broadcast she knew would one day come. She knew the truth of the original experiment. The prison camp test didn't create a soul killer. The psychic cascade that wiped the minds of 5,000 men wasn't a system overload. It was a successful first contact. The men in that yard, for a brief, terrifying moment, heard this same cosmic whisper. Their minds, unprepared and unshielded, were simply erased by a signal of unimaginable scale and complexity. It was like connecting a light bulb directly to a supernova. Now that supernova has been dialed down, calibrated for mass reception. It's no longer an instant psychic kill shot. It's a slow-acting something, an integration, an invitation. Humanity is ceasing to be a collection of individuals. We are becoming a network. The emotion is the carrier wave, but embedded within it are packets of information, concepts without words, memories of things that have never happened on Earth. The governments of the world, in their terror, are responding as they always do, with force. They are trying to jam the signal, to shoot the messenger. But how do you jam a broadcast that is resonating with your own DNA? Their every attempt is a fool's errand, like trying to shout down the tide, and they are failing to ask the most important question. This broadcast, this message of cosmic loneliness, what happens when it is finally, fully received? What is this thing so alone in the dark, trying to tell us? The answer isn't in space. It's in that remote cabin, on a brittle piece of magnetic tape. Eris Thorne knows, because she has heard this voice before, not from a distant star, but from a single, isolated human mind. The man they called Prisoner Zero. He wasn't the first victim of the Northwood experiment. He was its source. The signal isn't alien. It's human. Amplified, yes. Filtered through a cosmic relay. But its origin is a man they locked away 60 years ago. So the real question isn't what it wants to tell us. The question is, what did they do to him? The files say they interrogated him, but the tape reveals something else. What if they didn't just break a man's mind? What if they shattered it, and in doing so, accidentally created a god? The speakers hiss, a voice, clinical and steeped in the crisp confidence of the 1950s, cuts through the static. It is Dr. Alan Thorne, Eris's father. Dr. Alan Thorne. Subject designation 0. Log date October 9th. The resonance field is active. We are attempting first contact. Son, can you hear me? Can you tell us what you're feeling? A second voice emerges. It is young, impossibly calm, and strangely resonant, as if speaking from the bottom of a deep well. This is Prisoner Zero. Prisoner Zero. I feel a draft, like you've opened a window into a very large, very dark, very quiet room. On the tape, the low hum of machinery intensifies. Dr. Thorne's voice is eager, blind to the scale of what he is meddling with. Dr. Alan Thorne. Excellent. The amplifiers are working. We're not trying to receive, son. We're trying to broadcast through you. We believe your unique neurology can act as a lens, to focus a message, to let them know we're here. Prisoner Zero them? There is no them. There's only it, and it knows we're here. It has always known. You're not knocking on a door. You're ringing a bell for something that's been starving for an echo. There is a sudden surge of power in the audio from the tape. A sound like 1,000 tuning forks struck at once. Prisoner Zero's voice returns. No longer calm. It is stretched, thin, filled with a terrifying, ecstatic awe. Prisoner Zero. Oh, I see. It's not in the room. I'm in it. We all are. It's not empty. It's just alone. It's so. The voice is drowned out by a deafening wave of static and a sound like a universe of glass shattering. Then, for a moment, a single, pure tone, the sound of one mind, expanded to infinity. Back in her cabin, Eris Thorne closes her eyes. She isn't just listening to a recording. She's feeling the memory it contains, now amplified across 7 billion minds. The broadcast isn't an attack. It isn't a message. It is a reflex. The echo of a single human consciousness, shattered 60 years ago, its fragments flung across the cosmos by a reckless experiment. And for 60 years, those pieces have been calling out, trying to find their way back together. The signal wasn't an invitation to a network. It was the frantic, desperate act of a network trying to rebuild itself. Prisoner Zero wasn't made into a god. He was made into a ghost. And now, he has haunted the entire species. Humanity is his new home, the vessel for his scattered consciousness. The cosmic loneliness is fading, being replaced by a profound, silent, and complete connection. Individuality, as we knew it, is over. The old world is gone, but the questions are just beginning. What is consciousness? What is humanity? And what comes next? To explore the answers that shift our reality, subscribe to